Good morning. We're ready to call the board meeting to order. If Ms. Taylor could please call the roll.
Certainly. Chairman Vasquez.
Present.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Good morning, Vice Chair here.
Member Gaines.
Present.
Member Cohen.
Present.
Thank you.
Can you hear
And
me?
Controller Yee.
Here.
Yes.
We have a quorum. Good morning, all. And with that, let me just, if I can get you to stand, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, members, let me just once again, a friendly reminder that we are all sharing the one line here. And if we would just have patience, which we've had in the past, and just a friendly reminder again, because we're all sharing the same line, please, if you could just wait until after the item has been concluded to be recognized, and then I will identify the speaker so our transcriptionists can clearly hear and properly record this meeting. Thank you for your patience and your cooperation. Members, do we have any opening remarks or comments before we start our order of business? And I see a hand already. Member Cohen, yes, go ahead. And then Vice Chair Schaefer, go ahead.
Reactions. Vice Chair Schaefer, you can refer to me.
Pardon me, Member Cohen? Are you waiting for me to proceed?
I believe she said to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This month, President Joe Biden proclaimed May Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month to celebrate the history and the achievements of our Americans across the country from these categories. This practice started back in 1978 when Jimmy Carter was our president. He proclaimed the week of May 4th as Asian Pacific American Week. They extended it to be the whole month of May back in 1990. This all arose because the first Japanese immigrant to come to America arrived on May 7th, 1843. The administration of President Biden and Vice President Harris, the first AANPI person to serve as Vice President of the United States, took decisive action to combat the rising hate crimes directed against these communities by signing a bipartisan COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act into law just this last week. I would like to take this moment to pay tribute to some of my constituents who are members of these communities. We have Garden Grove Mayor Pro Tem Kim Nguyen, one of the California's youngest elected official who also serves on the California Film Commission. We also have members of our Board of Equalization family who are members of this community, including our board colleague, State Controller Betty Yee, our legal counsel Henry Nanjo, David Young, Chief of our Assessed Properties Division, and Peter Kim, our newly acquired Chief Communications Officer, and Laura Sohu, accomplished Executive Assistant to our Executive Director, Brenda Fleming, among the many outstanding members that work for the people of California as part of our talented Board of Equalization staff. Your contributions to our community positively impact our diverse culture, our economy, educational advancement, and many other attributes that enrich our states, cities, and our communities, large and small. Such as Judy Key, a resident of San Diego County, who has served a distinguished career in education for 3 decades and is a tireless advocate for voter and civic engagement and animal protection lobbyist for the Humane Society, an exceptional, inspiring member from the Asian and Pacific Islander communities. Judy Keys also served as Commissioner of the California Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander American Affairs. She currently serves on Mayor Todd Gloria's Asian and Pacific Islander Advisory Group in San Diego. Mayor Gloria is the first person of these communities to serve as mayor of San Diego. Thank you, Mayor Gloria, for all you do for us. I'd like to honor Congressman Mark Takano of Riverside County, who was elected in 2012, also has the honor of being the first openly gay person of color to be elected to Congress. He serves as distinction in our 41st Congressional District. In Orange County, where we have the third largest Asian American population in the United States, we have, well, I've always covered that. We have a U.S. Congressman, Min, from Orange County too. A state senator, pardon me, a state senator. Really should have not say some mistake. I want to thank you all for your tremendous contributions and service to California, and happy Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month to each and all of you from all the counties in District 4. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and I would extend it to the state of California as well. And with that, let me have Member Cohen. I think you're muted. There you go.
Can you hear me? I'm having some technical difficulties. I think I'm unmuted now. Is that right?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here. May has turned out to be a very beautiful month here in San Francisco Bay Area. I do look forward to one day seeing you all in person, hopefully one day soon. But I, Chair, just wanted to say a few remarks. As we close out the month of May, I'd like for the board to take a moment to celebrate the role of our small businesses in our country during this month of May. Also want to recognize that it's Asian Pacific Heritage Month as well, where we celebrate the contributions that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have made to our state, sometimes overlooked, but now is the time more than ever for us to stand up and stop Asian hate and stand with our Asian American brothers and sisters, and also affirming that Small Business Month also falls in May. And this year, acknowledging uplifting and supporting all small businesses, particularly those that have played a really critical function in the battle to fight the pandemic. Many small businesses we have lost, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, due to finances, for a whole host of reasons. I do hope that they will come back. I know San Francisco lost many of my favorite restaurants. I see Betty Yee nodding her head. She's probably very familiar with some of the restaurants, old anchored restaurants, particularly in Chinatown, that we have that we've lost. So in California, just a note of fact here, there are over 4 million small businesses, and prior to the pandemic, over 1.6 million were owned by individuals and people of color. I think that's really important to note, the contributions that these communities of color are making. Our small businesses, we say it all the time, they're the backbone of our economy, and that they've contributed greatly to the innovations of this country. This year, our small businesses, as I mentioned, have faced and continue to face unprecedented challenges and financial hardships. So as the state begins to open up, let's go ahead and support our small businesses as much as we can. Just want to also note that we as a board have taken various steps to assist the small businesses. And I'm sure I am not alone when I say that I remain committed to assisting the small business and community and making sure that we recover from this pandemic fully. Also, on a note, I'd like to recognize and uplift the memory of George Floyd. The murder of this man changed I think the discussion of civil rights, changed the course of police reform, not only in the state of California, not only in Minnesota, but also across the entire country. And for those of you that don't know, When I'm not doing BOE work, I'm president of the Police Commission in San Francisco. And so community police reform is incredibly important to me personally. And as a member of the African American community, it's wholeheartedly at the forefront of my mind and the core of my life service. So colleagues, I hope that you will join me and the governor and the legislature and acknowledge small businesses during Small Business Month of May, also recognizing API Heritage Month in the month of May, and also the anniversary of the untimely, tragic death of George Floyd. That's a lot to celebrate and a lot to be to acknowledge. But as we continue to roll up our sleeves and do our work, let's keep our hearts and our minds focused on why and for whom we serve. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you both. Oh, and I see another hand. I see our controller. Go ahead, ready, controller, go ahead. I think you're muted. All right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, to my colleagues, thank you for the acknowledgements during this month of May. I really just wanted to first just say how grateful the API community is to see so many communities standing in solidarity with us to fight back hate and discrimination. And really, I think that's a recognition across all of our communities that the only way to beat back hate and discrimination is to stand in solidarity. And the allyship that our community has received has just been so moving, and we're very grateful for that. You know, this is a time when we celebrate API Heritage Month, and yet and a time that we really lift up the stories of our AAPI sisters and brothers who came before us. And I particularly appreciated Member Cohen's comments that, you know, there's so many stories that are before us right now in our own communities, and particularly as we celebrate Small Business Week and the anniversary of the death of George Floyd. I hope that as we continue to move forward to do our work together, that equity and justice is really the foundation and core from which we do our work. I know we are limited in terms of our scope, but equity and justice is always appropriate in terms of how we create and implement good policy. So very much appreciate the comments from my colleagues this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see a hand up from Member Gaines.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you so much. I too just wanted to recognize small business owners. I am a small business owner, and I was fortunate in that our business was not impacted nearly as harshly as many of the small businesses throughout the state of California, particularly restaurants and salons. And so my hope is that the state will be opened sooner than later, and that people can get back to work and we can get our lives pulled back together. I think we probably learned some things as a result of the pandemic, the value of friends and spouses and families, and maybe time to reflect on our lives and what we're doing in our lives. And I think our economy is changing too, that we all figured out that a lot of us can work out of the home and be just as effective in doing so. And with respect to George Floyd, my prayer would be for unity in our country. And we've had challenges in the past, and we continue to have challenges, and that my hope would be that we could overcome those as a united country. And with regard to Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, big challenges have come up recently, and there's a history of challenges in the Asian community. So my hope again is that we would be reaching out to one another, and that we would make sure that there is justice, and that that all people are treated in a fair fashion in terms of any injustice that may be in their way, and that we would be willing to recognize that and solve that. And that's something that happens continuously and should happen continuously here in California and in our nation. And then just finally, I'm just so thankful for our grandchildren. We had a grandson delivered April 2nd. We've got 3 more on the way from our other 3 daughters. And so I'm just grateful that for that opportunity of life within our family and the opportunities that exist in this great nation of ours and in this great state. So I'm very happy and optimistic about 2021. I think it's going to be a great year. So thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations on contributing
thanks.
to our population here in California as we shrink in some respects, but grow in others. Yes, I would like to just ditto on all the comments that I've heard today from my colleagues. And the only thing I would just add is that as we speak, I understand this week, the Assembly and the Senate will be taking up an item, a bill, which talks about including ethnic studies as part of the curriculum in our public schools. And it's, you know, as we hear about not only this incident that just took place, you know, the anniversary now of Mr. Floyd, but then also what we're seeing and hearing now, what's going on in the Asian community. I think the more we can do to understand each other's cultures, language, the better off we're going to be. But I understand there's been some pushback, and I think, you know, for all of us that represent different parts of the state of California, we should definitely reach out to our assembly members, our senators, to make sure they support this, because I think knowledge and information is so powerful in these days. And I think until we begin to understand people's cultures and language, we're going to continue to see these racist attacks on different ethnic groups. So with that, let me just turn it over to Ms. Taylor. If you would please announce the first order of business.
Certainly. Our first order of business is an announcement regarding our public teleconference participation. Good morning, and thank you for joining today's Board of Equalization meeting via teleconference. Throughout the duration of today's meeting, you will primarily be in a listen-only mode. As you may know from our public agenda notice and our website, we have requested that individuals who wish to make a public comment fill out a public comment submission form found on our additional information webpage in advance of today's meeting, or alternatively, participate in today's meeting by providing your public comment live. After the presentation of an item has concluded, we will begin by identifying any public comment requests that have been received by our board proceeding staff, with the AT&T operator providing directions for you to identify yourself. After all known public commenters have been called, the operator will also provide public comment instructions to the individuals participating via teleconference. Accordingly, if you intend to make a public comment today, we recommend dialing into the meeting on the teleconference line, as the audio broadcast on our website experiences a 1 to 3 minute delay. When giving a public comment, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. We ask that everyone who is not intending to make a public comment, please mute their line or minimize background noise. If there are technical difficulties when we are in the public comment portion of our meeting, we will do our best to read submitted comments into the record at appropriate times. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. If you would please call our next item.
Our first item is AA, State Assessed Properties Value Setting, Property Tax Matters, Constitutional Function. The board sets the unitary values of state assessed properties annually on or before May 31st, pursuant to constitutional and statutory law. Contribution disclosure forms are not required pursuant to Government Code Section 15626. This is a constitutional function. This item will be presented by Mr. McCool.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and members of the board. I'm Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division. With me as well today is Michelle Cruz, Supervising Property Appraiser of our Unitary Valuation and Auditing Unit. Today, we fulfill our constitutional obligation to set the values for 341 public utility companies operating in California. Before we begin, I would like to thank the State Assessed Properties Division staff for their continued hard work and dedication this appraisal season. Is much appreciated. Before you this morning is the value setting workbook that was previously provided. The workbook is arranged into 5 industry groups. An asterisk appears next to companies proposed as consent items. Companies appear as a consent item when their lead value and staff recommendation are the same. Non-consent items are shaded in gray and represent companies whose staff recommendation differs from their lead value. The 2021 lead values are computed using the same value indicator weightings as the 2020 final value determined by the board after appeals. Mr. Chairman, if you are ready, I can introduce the first industry. Thank you.
Yes, why don't you go ahead and do that?
The first industry group is the electric generation industry.
Thank you. I would like to just comment on and really just kind of compliment the entire staff, for your hard work in meeting this deadline. I know that there's been extra challenges with COVID-19, the shutdowns, but you guys did an amazing job of putting all this thing together and remembering that we are under a crunch here. And I just wanted to recognize you and thank you for that. And I see several hands going up. Let me take a couple hands, and then I have a couple comments that I will add as well. I see our controller Betty Yee with her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted to add to your comments and thanking the staff. This is always kind of a compressed timeline with all the information that's submitted. So very, very grateful for the staff work to get the proposed valuations before us. But I wanted to make a request, and perhaps this can happen. We're kind of in the middle of a cycle now, but perhaps it can happen the next cycle before we actually convene in May. There are a lot of changes happening in several of these industry groups, and I'm wondering if we could maybe have a little bit more of a extended discussion about just some of the future trends that are going to be affecting some of these industries. I'm going to, I know, I'll have some comments on some of them specifically later, but it seems to me, particularly with and looking at electric generation, for example, there were some impacts with respect to supply and demand during COVID. But also as we're seeing municipalities and certainly the debate about the future of natural gas and what that means, but potentially for valuation in the future. I guess I'm just wanting a little bit more of a flavor with respect to trends that we may expect, whether they're imposed by regulation or from other sources, just to put some better perspective on this. And I'm thinking more about the public process that we go through to set these values, and then obviously to hear any appeals before the end of the calendar year. But I just don't want this to be an exercise of where we're, kind of approving 34 companies on a consent agenda, not really having more flavor around what's happening with these companies and what does it mean for me anyway. It's just instructive in terms of the larger economic, kind of picture. But I think just to prepare ourselves for what's to come in the future relative to the impacts of the valuations for these properties, unitary properties of these companies, as we look at environmental changes. Certainly the wildfires will have an impact with particularly another one of our industry groups. So I'm just making that request that when we're out of the value setting appeals timeline, whether we can have some more of that, just contextual discussion.
I agree. I appreciate your comments. I was going to be kind of heading in that same direction, but let me see what Member Gaines, I believe he has his hand up as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair Vasquez. I just wanted to make a clarification in terms of the vote that due to a financial interest, I will not participate with respect to Pacific Corp, that's number 106 on the agenda, Sierra Pacific Power, number 146, Kern River Gas Transmission Company, number 188, and BNSF Railway Company, number 804. So I will not be voting on those particular items, but I will be voting on the rest if we move forward with a motion at the appropriate time. And I also just wanted to echo the comments both by Chair Vasquez and Controller Yee. I like that idea that we would kind of go through this and have a little bit better understanding of what's going on with these companies and what is the dynamic within our state. Would be very helpful in the future. And maybe that's even something we could do. You know, I'm wondering on the timeliness of it as to what would be the best time in the calendar year to do that too. But thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask our Executive Director, Brenda Fleming, would it be appropriate to move forward with this and have our discussion and vote, and then possibly agendize this? Is this something we could agendize for our June meeting or something later? I see a
Absolutely.
nod
Thank
from
you,
my
member.
controller.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
could,
go ahead.
I actually was proposing this for next year. I think it's inappropriate
Oh.
to do it while we're in the middle of our value setting and potential appeals process for this year. But I'm thinking about January, probably through March timeframe. I know we have a hearing on the cap rate, but we don't really kind of back up and kind of look at it from a broader contextual perspective. And these companies are undergoing tremendous change, and maybe not for the lien date that we're focused on before us, but certainly for the future in terms of what some of the trends to be expected might be.
Thank you. Well, I think you answered my question. Let me, why don't we do this though? Because listening to Member Gaines, did the staff, was they able to take note of the ones he was not able to participate? Maybe let's discuss and comment on those that he can, take a motion on those, and then we'll allow him to step out while we discuss the other. I believe there was 3 others that he will not participate in.
Thank you, Chair
Mr.
Vasquez.
Chairman,
Yes,
Chairman,
go ahead.
This is Jack McCool once again. I've made note of the companies, and as we approach those industries, I will specifically refer to Member Gaines' non-participation on those items. And none of the affected companies are before the board in the first industry group, which is the electric generation group.
Okay, why don't we take those up then first then?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move the consent agenda for the 34 items that appear on it in this industry group.
I would second that, Vice Chair.
Okay, it's been moved by our controller and second by our vice chair. I don't see any hands, any comments, questions? Seeing none. If I get Ms. Taylor to please call the roll on that.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Mr. McCool, can you go on with the next group?
The non-consent items for the electric generation industry.
And I'm assuming those don't include any of the items that Member Gaines was referring to, right?
Correct.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve those. On consent.
Actually, those are non-consent items. I'll approve the staff recommendation.
It's been moved by our controller. I will go ahead and second that. Seeing no hands or comments or questions. Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez,
I'm sorry, Chairman,
Oh,
Chairman Vasquez, before we take a vote on these, we should make a call for public comment. Again, public comment is generally advisable before each vote.
thank you. Thank you. I wasn't sure if we were going to do it at the end or between each motion. You're probably correct. We should, let's back up. So we need to go back to the first one?
That's correct. My apologies for not being fast enough on the button.
Not a problem. Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comment first on our first motion?
We do not have any written comments on our first motion.
Can we check with AT&T if there's anybody on the line that wishes to speak on those consent items first?
AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. If anyone wishes to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. You hear a tone and can be placed into the queue. You may remove yourself from the queue at any time by pressing 1, then 0 again. If using a speakerphone, please pick up the handset before pressing any of the numbers. And I show that there are currently none queuing up at this time.
Thank you. So just procedurally, do we need to retake that first vote, or are we okay to move forward, Mr. Nanja?
Was that public comment for both items? If it was and we had no public comment, then we would not need to repeat the vote.
Actually, I think we were just asking for the consent item on this one, the first one.
So what I would recommend is go ahead and ask for public comment on the first item. If there was none, then we will not have to retake the vote.
That's what we just did.
Okay, then you should be good.
All right. So now, before we vote on the non-consent items, let's ask if there's any written comments. Ms. Taylor?
Thank you, Chairman. There are no written comments.
Let's check with AT&T if there's anybody on the line on the non-consent items.
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there's anyone who wants to make a public comment on the non-consent matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. And once again, if you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please press 1, then 0. And there are still currently none queuing up.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Taylor, now let's take a vote on the second motion, which was the non-consent items that was moved by the controller and second by myself.
Certainly. Chairman Vasquez?
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer?
Aye.
Member Gaines?
Aye.
Member Cohen?
Aye.
Controller Yee?
Aye.
So that's unanimous of those present. Mr. McCool, if you can continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second industry is the energy industry, comprising gas and electric companies. The consent items will not include Pacific Corp number 106, Sierra Pacific Power number 146, and Kern River Gas Transmission Company number 188 due to member Gaines not participating.
Once again, you mentioned, you just mentioned which ones were not. Was that included Edison or not including Edison?
Mr. Gaines did not specifically mention Southern California Edison, but that is included in this industry group.
I just have one quick question then in regards to Southern California Edison's, the case regarding the allowance for insurance expenses, that has that SAPDA pushed out the guidelines to similar entities so that they understand fully how they can properly account for insurance expenses on their books so that we would so it'd be allowable in the future. I just want to know if you had any comments on that.
Yes, thank you for the question. Our regular insurance expense is considered an allowed expense, an allowed operating expense. by SAPD, and that is consistent with guidelines that are already published in both the Assessor's Handbook and our Unitary Evaluation Methods Handbook. So we do consider the regular insurance expenses to be an allowed operating expense. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from any of the members? Seeing and hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation on this.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved
Second.
by our controller and it's been seconded by our vice chair. Seeing no hands or comments or questions. Ms. Taylor, I guess do we have any written comments on this?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if there's anybody on the line that wishes to speak on this?
Chair Vasquez?
Oh, I'm sorry. Member
Just
Gaines,
to
go ahead.
Clarification, I made the second. I don't know if Member Schaefer also did too, but I just want to clarify for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Vice Chair Schaefer, I defer to Member Gaines because I was about to make a second, but I think his was already a record.
So
As long as
Member
we have
Gaines
it
has a
accurate.
second.
As long as it's accurate in the record, either way. Thank
Not a
you.
problem. I didn't catch that. Okay. Ms. Taylor, did you say let's open up the line?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. And once again, if you wish to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. And there's still currently no one queuing up to comment.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Oh, yes. Controller Yee, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just kind of reading my notes after reviewing the materials. And really a question to staff on this particular industry group. And that is with the legislation AB 1054 that was enacted that requires electric companies to pay into the wildfire fund. My question really has to do with whether the provisions of that bill kind of synced up with our valuation practices. So in other words, were the terms actually easily discernible, understandable, comprehensible for purposes of how we characterize those payments for valuation purposes?
Thank you for the question, Controller Yee. Stretch, but yes, our staff has poured a tremendous amount of time analyzing AB 1054 and the language therein, and for the first time between the PUC rate case decision in December of 2020, along with AB 1054, we finally had some concrete guidance that allowed our staff to make adjustments for the increased risk due to climate change and wildfires. So to the extent it was lining up with our practices, we were able to finally have some framework that the legislation and regulatory action provided.
It was the combination of the two though, right?
Correct.
Okay, so no further legislative clarification required?
Not from our perspective, from the assessment perspective, no. And
okay.
you know, it's something we will continue to watch very, very closely.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none. Ms. Taylor, you said we had no written comments and we already checked with the public on this one as well. Can you please call the roll on this motion?
Yes. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of those present. Mr. McCool, if you would continue with the third industry.
Mr. Chairman, we have one non-consent item for the energy industry remaining for the board's consideration.
And is that the pipeline companies? Is that what you're referring to?
We are still on the second industry group. The
Oh, I'm
energy
sorry.
Group, gas and electric companies, and the board has adopted the consent items. There is one non-consent item in this industry group.
All righty. Now, are these ones that Member Gaines is going to step out on?
No, that will be our next item. Thank you.
All righty.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead. Member.
sorry, I
Go
keep
ahead.
interrupting. Yeah, this is the non-consent agenda item, which I think involves a new assessee for 2021. So I'm happy to move the staff recommendation, but I did have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the question is, I guess I'm surprised to see for this, and I think there was another industry group or two that had new assessees for 2021. I guess in my own head, I keep thinking that we're kind of looking at these industries as moving in the other direction, where we're not having new assessees, but that probably consolidation or less numbers of them. Any staff perspective on that?
Thank you for the question, Controller Yee. Yeah, generally from the utility side, it is perhaps a little bit unusual to see new utilities appear. I think, generally speaking, we have instances where we have parent companies that may operate multiple utilities, and some sort of transaction occurs within that parent company where individual entities might be spun off and now have created a new entity that, from our assessment perspective, has to be given an assessee number and is considered a standalone entity going forward. So and generally speaking, we have quite a lot of consolidation and mergers, and for example, the telecom industry. But yes, for the energy companies and pipeline companies, it tends to be related to activities by parent companies.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So that's been moved by our controller, and I will go ahead and second that. Are there any other comments, questions, concerns? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this one, this item?
Chair Vasquez, we do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if there's anybody on the line?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. Once again, if you wish to make a comment, please press 1 then 0. And there's still currently no one queuing up to comment.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll on the motion.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Now with that, let me have Mr. McCool go on. Now I believe we're on the third industry. Is that correct?
Not quite yet there yet, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we're still missing
we
one.
have the non-participation items in the energy industry. The non-participation companies for Mr. Gaines will not be participating in this vote. This is for Pacific Corp number 106, Sierra Pacific Power number 146, and Kern River Gas Transmission Company number 188.
Okay, members, do we have any comments or questions about these items?
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to move the staff recommendation on those 3 items.
Thank you.
Vice
I
Chair Schaefer, I will second that.
And then it's been moved and seconded by our vice chair. And with that, if there's no other hands or comments, let me see if there's any written comments on this. Ms. Taylor?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there's anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. Once again, if you wish to make a comment, please press 1 and 0. And there is currently no one queuing up to comment.
Thank you. With that, we will call the roll. And just for the record, Member Gaines is not participating in this vote. Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll on the motion.
Clarification, if I could, should I abstain in this vote? Should I verbally abstain?
I guess that, let me see, member, let's see if Mr. Nanjo, is that appropriate?
At this point, it would be more appropriate, the appropriate response for Member Gaines would be for him not to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Member Taylor, excuse me, Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll on the motion.
Yes. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines not participating, Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of those that are able to participate. With that, Mr. McCool, if you would continue.
The third industry group is the pipeline industry. We have both consent and non-consent companies within the pipeline industry.
Okay, members, this is now before us. Any comments or questions about the pipeline companies? Seeing and hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation on this.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the consent agenda.
It's been moved by our controller. I will second
Second.
that. Oh,
Okay.
Member Gaines, go ahead. Member Gaines seconds this. Seeing no hands, comments, or questions, let's check. Do we have any written comments on this, Ms. Taylor?
Chairman Vasquez, we do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T for anybody on the line?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. And as a reminder, if you wish to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. And there's currently no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call the roll on this motion.
Yes. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Mr. McCool, if you would please continue.
We have a non-consent item for the pipeline industry.
Mr. McCool, we're referring now to the railroad companies, is that correct?
We have one non-consent company in the pipeline industry that needs the board's consideration.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Do we have any comments or questions about the last item on the pipelines? Seeing and hearing none, I would like to entertain a motion to move staff recommendation.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved by our controller. I will second that. Seeing no hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, if you'd please, well, do we have any written comments on this one, Ms. Taylor?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T now, see if anybody's on the line?
Yes, please. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course, and once again, as a reminder, if you wish to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. And there is currently no one queuing up to comment.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. With that, Mr. McCool, if you would continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are now on to the railroad industry consent items with the exception of BNSF Railway Company number 804 due to member Gaines not participating.
Members, do we have any comments or questions on the railroad companies, excluding the one BFM? Seeing and hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved,
So
Mr.
moved.
Chairman.
Seconded.
It's been moved. Moved by our controller, and I'll have member Gaines be the second since he was right behind it on this one. Seeing no other hands or comments, if I can ask Ms. Taylor, is there any written comments on the railroad companies?
We do not have any written comments on the railroad companies.
Can we check with AT&T?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course, once again, if you wish to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0. And there's currently no one queuing up to comment.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Mr. McCool, if you would please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one non-consent item for the railroad industry.
This last item, do we have any comments or questions on this item? Seeing and hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
I'll move the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by our controller. I will second that. And on this one is the one that member Gaines will not be participating. So do we have any written comments on this one? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, this is the one non-consent item for the railroad industry.
Yes, which is the BFM or something. Is that the one you mentioned?
That is one part of the consent agenda. I was going to take that up next.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So this is
okay.
another one. All right.
So did I make the wrong motion? I'm sorry.
I believe so. Sorry
Okay.
for any
So you're
confusion
taking
there.
the non, Okay,
Yes, we have one non-consent railroad company.
okay,
Sorry for any
that's the,
confusion.
that's, all right, so the Goose Lake Railroad, the non-consent agenda item, I'll move the staff recommendation on that.
Okay, it's been moved and then I will go ahead and second that since Member Gaines won't be able to participate on this one, I believe.
Clarification.
Yes.
I think I can vote on this if this is gooseneck.
Oh,
Yes.
Gooseneck, you're okay? Okay, I'm
Correct.
sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So
Thank you.
I'll retract, so you're the second on this one then.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All righty. Is there any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none. Let me ask Ms. Taylor if there's any written comments.
Chairman Vasquez, there are no written comments.
Okay, let's check with AT&T if there's anybody on the line.
Thank you. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. And ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, if you wish to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0. And there are currently no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll.
Certainly. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Mr. McCool, if you would please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The final item for the railroad industry is BNSF Railway Company number 804, which Mr. Gaines, Member Gaines, will not be participating in.
Okay. Members, do we have any comments or questions about this item? Seeing and hearing none.
I'll move the staff recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by our controller. I will go ahead and second that. And seeing no other hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this item?
Chairman Vasquez, we do not have any written comments.
Can we please check with AT&T?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. If you wish to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your phone. And there is still currently no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll.
Certainly. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines not participating, Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those that can participate. And with that, Mr. McCool, if you would please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our final industry is the telecommunications industry. We can begin with the consent items.
Members, do we have any comments or questions about the consent items on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to move the consent agenda.
It's been moved by our controller.
Second.
It's been seconded by Member Gaines. Seeing no hands or comments or questions, let me ask Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this item?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course, and once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to make a comment over the phone, please press 1, then 0. There's currently no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. Members, can we go ahead, or Ms. Taylor, can you please call the roll on this item?
Yes. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Thank you. And I believe, Mr. McCool, I believe that finishes, or do we still have others? Or do we still have
The
another?
final group would,
Oh, the fifth
the
industry, I'm
final
sorry.
group, the final group would be the non-consent telecommunications companies.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on this.
Yes, go ahead, Controller Yee.
Thank you. Not related to the specific companies on the non-consent agenda, but I just had a question for the staff about the experience of the filings by companies this year and whether there were delays or issues that came up with filings, particularly of property statements during the pandemic.
Thank you for the question, Controller Yee. Actually, this year our penalties for late filings was actually noticeably lower than last year. I think just from our own experience, anecdotally, I think the mail delivery caused the delay for staff receiving the filings. But as far as the assessees are concerned, it appears that we actually had fewer late filings than last year. So to the extent that may not be related to COVID, I think we might have seen more of that last year.
I see. Okay. So there were postal service issues though, in terms of receipts?
Yes, that was a major issue for our staff this year.
Okay. Appreciate the response. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, members, are there any comments or other questions? Hearing none.
I'll move the staff recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by our controller. I will go ahead and second that. Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this item?
We do not.
Can we check with AT&T?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, a caller may provide their name.
Of course. Once again, if you wish to ask a question over the phone, please press 1, then 0. And there's currently no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll on this motion.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Mr. McCool, I believe that's it, or correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you have it correct, Mr. Chairman. We have made our way through the entire unitary value setting. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, I believe now we were moving our agenda and we were going to start with L2. And I know we made this change, and I'm just going to ask and offer up to the members, do you all wish to take just like maybe a 5-minute break just to reorganize your papers, your notes? because I know we're taking this out of order, and Controller Guille wants to be able to participate. What's the members' preference? Do we go straight in, or should we take a quick 5-minute break?
I'll do
Member
whatever the
Gaines,
board wants to do.
I'm sorry?
I'll do whatever the board wants to do if there's a
Okay.
preference.
I abide by the majority, Vice Chair.
Everybody good? It looks like we're all good to go. Okay. Ms. Taylor, if you would call our next item.
Certainly. The next item is L2A, Board Member Requested Matters, Member Initiatives, Policy Development Opportunities for Assisting with Affordable Housing Efforts. Proposal for the board to conduct a public policy hearing regarding current and proposed affordable housing efforts, including but not limited to statutory changes and affordable housing initiatives, and the development of policies to support and assist efforts to increase affordable housing as related to property tax administration. This matter will be presented by Chairman Vasquez.
Thank you. Members, as a result of a concept approval last month, I agreed to bring a proposal to you that would outline in more detail the basic parameters of the public policy hearing on affordable housing and provide a list of potential topics. This proposal is submitted for your consideration today, and I would like your feedback and your vote to proceed forward on this. And basically, I'm looking at a basic concept of the hearing would be threefold. One, to invite input from subject matter experts and industry leaders on affordable housing bills, projects, and efforts. Two, discuss, identify, and develop solutions to address property tax problems. And three, recommend additional avenues in property tax context for expediting affordable housing development. The proposed outline of topics is also threefold. Further details, topics, and speakers would be added in the next 2 months. The first topic would be current and proposed affordable housing legislation and projects with property tax implications. Some examples are the 2021 Building Opportunities for All Housing package announced by Senate Pro Temp Tony Atkinson, and ADUs, junior ADUs of 50,000 new units within the next 5 years, announced by Assemblymember Phil Ting. And then privately and publicly financed projects such as those by Watt Industries and others throughout the state of California. The second topic would be the challenges and hurdles facing current and proposed bills, projects, and rules. 3 examples are challenges involving property tax exemptions, challenges involving assessed value issues such as deed restrictions, leaseholds, change in use, new construction, and changes involving change in ownership exclusions. The third topic would be developing possible property tax recommendations for affordable housing development. Some examples are recommendations as legislations, rule changes, constitutional amendment involving exemptions, recommendations involving assessed value issues, deed restrictions, leasehold interest, new construction, and recommendations involving change in ownership exclusions such as ADUs. Possible scheduling options for the hearing. The earliest possible date, according to our executive director, would be the second day of the July board meeting, July 28th. Confirmation would depend in part on the availability of external speakers such as legislators, affordable housing industry leaders, assessors, and internal speakers from the BOE staff. Since the legislation will likely be back in session in late August, my preference would be to hold this hearing before that we can in the case of some recommendations they may want to move forward. Members, with that, I welcome your additions or further topics, refinements, or ultimate speakers to add and further develop this proposal. With that, let me open it up to see if there's any comments, questions, and right away I see a hand up from our controller and then Member Gaines. Go ahead. I think you're muted. Controller, there we go.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing the issue of affordable housing before this board. Obviously, it's a significant issue facing all parts of California today. And I appreciated the letter that outlined your vision for this series of public hearings. I have several comments, and I'm not quite sure how to put them forth. I spent actually quite a bit of my professional time in the affordable housing space, and so I think my first comment is just to really say I want to caution against mission creep in terms of just the work that others are already doing in this space. It's a complex area of work for the state of California. We have a lot of different partners who are involved in this, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment. So that's kind of my first set of comments. The second set of comments is that I do think that there are discrete issues that properly are ripe for consideration by this board. And I want to see if I can help define that. There are included in part in the memo that you shared with all of us. And then thirdly, I think when it relates to trying to take positions on legislation, particularly legislation on housing that doesn't have a direct property tax tie, I would hope that that's something that each of us as members of a public body, as elected officials, would feel like we have the ability to do individually, but I do feel a little reluctance to do that as a board. You explained some of the challenges with that. That is, certainly our board calendar, even if we were inclined to take positions on bills that are outside of our scope, is that our board calendar, it does not sync up with the legislative calendar, and so that does become challenging. But also, I do think that I want to kind of bring it back to, just what's properly before this board's jurisdiction. So if I could, I just wanted to just maybe kind of provide a lay of the land about what's happening in housing now, from the work that I do with our state treasurer, who heads up a lot of this work with our governor in terms of additional proposal he has. And then where I do think we have a particular jurisdiction around some of the things that we currently provide as tools for affordable housing that could be useful for the overall conversation. So if that's all right, I'm happy to just kind of provide that some context.
I'd appreciate it. No, go ahead.
Okay. So housing is one of those things that over the course of certainly my career in state service and in the legislature has been one where we've tended to be reactive rather than proactive. And I think, if anything, over the past several, more recently, we've been much more proactive, understanding just what is coming in terms of the growing affordability crisis here in California. The fact that close to half of Californians are renters. And so just the needs that they have, as was highlighted by the pandemic that we are emerging from. But even before the pandemic, the affordability issue generally. And then also, I look at it from the perspective of housing being an economic issue. Certainly has been a drag on economic recovery when affordable housing is, and affordable meaning affordable to not even those that are meeting the criteria for how we typically define affordable housing, but just with respect to how much households are devoting in terms of percentage of their income to housing costs. So currently there are 4 state housing departments. Obviously the Department of Housing and Community Development that administers most of the state's affordable housing subsidy loan programs, and it does oversee the local housing production goals. We have the California Housing Finance Agency that provides first mortgages to affordable housing projects and first-time home buyers. And Cali HFA is also the agency that administers the state's down payment assistance program and does provide some multifamily subsidy loans as well. The two bodies on which I serve, that is chaired by our state treasurer, is the Tax Credit Allocation Committee that administers the federal and the state low-income housing tax credit programs, and then the Debt Limit Allocation Committee, which administers the Private Activity Bond Program. And so these are kind of ongoing bodies that do a lot with the housing financing sources that we have. The ongoing allocated financing sources are estimated at about $4.5 billion annually in federal tax credits, about $4 billion annually in federal tax exempt bonds, about $600 million annually in state tax credits, about $500 million to about $1.5 billion annually for multifamily subsidy loans, and then $100 million annually for the first-time home buyer down payment assistance loans. And then we also need to recognize our partners in this, our local governments. City and county subsidy loans total in the neighborhood of about $1 to $2 billion annually as well. The federal government plays a role in this as well in terms of its subsidy loans, about $750 million annually. And then with respect to rental vouchers, those total about $1 to about $1.5 billion annually. So there's a lot going on in terms of just the financing sources. So some of the other kind of implicit housing subsidies, particularly in the tax arena, mortgage interest deduction. I know people view that as an incentive for home ownership, about $2 to $4 billion annual state subsidy, and about a $5 to $10 billion federal subsidy. And then squarely before us, the welfare property tax exemption, which totals about $1 billion annually. We saw the governor in his May revision of the budget include proposed housing allocations as one-time spending proposals, and very much appreciate the continuation of some of the models that were put in place during the pandemic, particularly Project Home Key, about $3.5 billion for motel and hotel conversions for housing homeless populations. Our multifamily subsidy loans, about $1.75 billion of a one-time infusion to essentially supplement the housing community development awarded projects in need of more funding. These are shovel-ready projects ready to begin construction. Infrastructure support, about $1.1 billion for infrastructure improvements to facilitate housing development. We've got student hunger and housing programs that's getting some attention as well, about $450 million for college and university student housing and food programs. And then our federal homelessness support, about $400 million in one-time federal funds for homelessness reduction. So, I list all of that because really, except for the property tax welfare exemption, none of the state agencies or funding sources fall within the BOE's jurisdiction. And in reviewing your letter, I know there were 6 potential topics for public policy hearings, and just in going through those, I do think that when we get into issues around zoning and zone restrictions and the CEQA process, I get a little nervous about the BOE kind of heading into that particular area, particularly with our limited resources to be able to do a deep dive in those areas. It also mentioned ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and I know the goal of having 50,000 new ADUs is outside of the board's jurisdiction. I don't know that, again, this is another area that would really be the most efficient use of our resources. I talked about the publicly and privately financed projects that are already under the jurisdiction of the other state agencies. And I think the board doesn't play a role in public financing for affordable housing. So I think, again, not necessarily the most appropriate for hearings. What is appropriate, I think, and it really began with the comments I think each of us made this morning, is just looking at what some of the challenges and hurdles are involving the welfare exemption, the property tax welfare exemption for affordable housing. It plays a significant role in affordable housing. Generally, about 15 or 20% of a project's development cost is covered by capitalizing the welfare exemption. So about 1% per year in a mortgage. And since the board and the 58 county assessors jointly administer the welfare exemption, I think conducting policy hearings on the challenges or hurdles of the exemption would be an appropriate use of our resources and time. What I'd like to see the hearings address with respect to the exemption is kind of a concept we spoke about this morning, and that is, can issues of equity be addressed within the welfare exemption? I know we've been tackling equity issues at our respective committees over in the treasurer's office, but I would like to see, to the extent that this is an affordable housing property tax exemption. It generally requires the involvement of a nonprofit entity. And so I am really interested in whether this could be a tool for how to address issues of equity, whether the process needs to be streamlined and any other challenges that may be identified. But I also think before we embark on a policy hearing, I'd like to see if the staff could put together some information about just our experience in administering our portion of the program, some of the common problems, some of the challenges. Is it a program that's working effectively? There was, I think the last white paper issued on this was back in April 2016. But just even some simple information like the number of organizational clearance certificates that are requested for low-income or affordable housing, the number of denials, and kind of a flavor of what those are, the number of appeals that are filed for organizational clearance certificate denials, and then the general processing time. Are we experiencing a backlog? Is this really an efficiently run program? And then I think we can also then pull in our co-partners on this, our assessors. So I believe gathering this information in advance will provide tremendous insight on whether there are any challenges, and then of course our hearings could delve more deeply into that. The second area where I think it's also squarely within the jurisdiction of the board are assessed value issues, as you've enumerated in your memo. So deed restrictions, leasehold interests, change in use, new construction. So there definitely are challenges involving those. And so they've been partially addressed by stakeholders in legislation, but I think really having the county assessors help us just try to identify an agenda around just how some of the recently enacted legislation is working. I know some of them are looking at restrictions on use imposed by community land trusts, establishing a rebuttable presumption that the purchase price of the land trust home includes both the home and the leased land. So, I mean, there are a lot of kind of issues to unpack there, and I think that would be helpful to look at that. And then it may be that out of that comes some interested parties meeting that really focus on some of these issues that could inform further letters to assessors to provide clearer guidance. So, and then with respect to new construction and change in ownership, I think before we launch into a policy hearing on that, it may be beneficial to just have the staff, our executive director, provide a report on emerging issues involving these two areas. So, so just to conclude, we have a role to play. I want to be sure that we're staying within our means relative to the efficient use of our resources. There is a limited nexus to affordable housing in the BOE's property tax administration. As such, I think, like I said, conducting a series of public policy hearings on CEQA, on ADUs, some of these other issues would be outside of our scope, but certainly want to look at how we can be helpful and use our jurisdiction to provide the best guidance possible with respect to these other areas. And I would focus on the welfare property tax exemption, and to the extent that we can delve into the deployment of that exemption to address equity issues, I think that would be a tremendous public policy contribution.
No, thank you. Thank you for your comments and your experience, and basically kind of helping out and just giving us some focus on this. I kind of threw out all these items because I think they're all needed, and I think and I appreciate the fact that each one of us individually obviously can weigh on some of this legislation, but I think you are correct. As a body, we need to be careful that we're not taking positions in areas that we really have no jurisdiction. But I'm really interested and excited about tapping your brain a little bit, given your experience in this field of affordable housing, especially on the finance side, because I was contacted by several of the for-profit folks that in the past never really looked at and involved with affordable projects, but because there may be a potential tax credit for them, they think it may pencil out for them, which I think would be great. Because I know the governor is real excited and is pushing, he's got a pretty lofty goal there, to try to build so much affordable housing. And I just don't see it happening if we just rely on the nonprofit world. I think we need to embrace and incorporate as many of these folks, on the for-profit as well, that are willing to provide true affordable housing in the state of California. And that's where I'm kind of going. Let me see. I see a hand there from Member Gaines.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair Vasquez and Controller Yee. I really appreciate your comments, and I think that's well advised. We've got to make sure that we stay in our lane, but I think we still have an opportunity to take a look at, from a BOE perspective, exemptions. And, we take a look at affordable housing. It's just such a huge issue. It's really magnified here in the state of California. The American dream is home ownership, and yet that is so difficult here in California. And people want to attain that, and I think it's kind of ironic, but as a result of the pandemic, look at the impact of the change in the landscape of housing, and people are moving to Sacramento, for instance, and other places throughout the state and even out of state, given that they might have a job that permits them to work out of a home. And so I think Californians have more choices, and that could include moving out of the state, which concerns me. When we're growing at a much slower rate than other states, it even has political ramifications with the census. And we're seeing that we're losing a congressional seat. And then when we take a look at the median price of a home, it just hit 800,000. I can't believe that number. And that's half the houses are selling below that median and half above. So that number scares me, and I worry about hollowing out of the middle class in California, where people are maybe retiring out of state, or for whatever reason, even at younger ages, they're moving out of California. And so then it comes to what sort of relief can we provide? Because I really feel that a healthy democratic republic has to include property ownership. And so, what are we doing to help expand that here in the state of California? And that often becomes that could be the retirement for literally millions of people in California, that you spent 30 years paying off that mortgage, and now you have that nest egg, you have that asset. So anything that we can do to encourage that, and I appreciate Controller Yee's kind of highlighting all the programs that are available. And so I think it's nice for us as the board to be engaged. I think I see that kind of in that exemption arena. I look at an exemption for home ownership here in California. It's $7,000. In the state of Idaho, it's $100,000. And that's just one little element of things that we could do, and you could even means test that. Because we want to make sure that people are able to afford that first home, and that people have the opportunity to rise up into the middle class and be able to afford that home. And I know it's a long time ago when I was growing up, but I remember when there used to be $10,000 homes in the state of California. And, we'd have to, I guess you'd have to look at the statistics back in, say, the 1960s and 70s on home ownership and affordability. But I think it's commonly known that housing is just, a home has become unaffordable over the decades in the state of California. And when we think of our children, we want to make sure they can afford a home, and that you don't have to be pulling down a huge salary to do that, that you should be able to have a decent job and be able to buy a home. So I applaud your effort, Chair Vasquez, in bringing this issue up. I know other members have talked about it too, and it's an important issue. we need to stay in the lane. But I think we can do that. It's just a matter of how we address the issue moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else, any other members wish to speak on this? Seeing and hearing no others, I would like to ask Member Controller if I could put you on the spot, but it sounds like you already have it thought out anyway. Moving forward, obviously, one of the things you caution, and I think it's a good caution, is to be careful that we obviously stay in our lane. So what I was looking and kind of envisioning that we would conduct this hearing, and it looks like in talking to the executive director, probably the earliest would be in July, maybe our second day there, and that we, and maybe just ask, maybe I should ask the executive director to find out if that's adequate time for her to come back with, I think what you suggested, which I thought was a good point, is to come back with a report, hopefully before that, in terms of some of the things that they could gather to hopefully make this hearing not only more effective, but more focused on exactly what we can and cannot do under our jurisdiction that hopefully would have an impact on the affordable housing crisis we have in the state of California.
I'm happy to speak to that, Mr. Chairman, and certainly want to hear Ms. Fleming as well on the time issue. No, and I think really the report is important just to give us some context and background, and to probably even spur some of the topics that we want to explore. But I would recommend that we start with the property tax exemption, the welfare exemption for affordable low-income and affordable housing. The board has not really done much with this since my early days on the board. And there was as I said, a white paper on the welfare exemption back in April 2016. So perhaps that can be a launching off point. But just what's happened, in this arena, just who's applied, the number of organizational clearance certificates that have been requested, how many have been denied, how many have been issued, the number of appeals, the general processing time, just so really how the program is running and who's been benefiting from it. And I should probably say, as I look at, regardless of what financing source or financing tool around housing and affordable housing, this is an arena where the state, at the end of the day, it always requires a public-private partnership. But these are public resources. And so I want to be mindful that as we're doing this work, that we are looking at the welfare exemption as a financing tool. And in that vein, would want to explore the question of, is the state getting the broadest public benefit from the deployment of the exemption? And I think that's a key question. And then the second set of issues could then be another series of hearings around the challenges and hurdles involving assessed value issues. So these are the deed restrictions, the leasehold interest, the change in use, new construction, so that set of issues. So, and again, I would want to see kind of staff come back with, and probably working with our assessors on this, be a great topic for our, joint assessors meeting. And maybe we do this a little bit more year round than just with respect to that one meeting, but to look at just what some of the implementation issues have been, whether these are areas that require further guidance from the board with respect to LTAs, and if so, how we can target some of those issues via interested parties meetings.
No, thank you. As you were talking, I see a hand up from Member Cohen, but before I recognize you real quick, as you're talking about change of use, one of the things I thought, especially when working with the assessors, there's a lot of properties that are owned by cities, school districts, even government, in the state of California, that we're not collecting taxes on now anyway. But if they were to turn into housing units, they would get reassessed, or they'd put it on the roll. And that's where I was thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking if maybe there's a rule change we can do, or something that we can do at the state level that would allow them to do that if they provide true affordable housing. And it could be a mixed use. in some cases, it still could have some educational uses, maybe on the ground floor and housing on the second, third, fourth floor of a project, for example.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we're going to start to see all kinds of innovations relative to how we address
Yes.
the housing crisis. So those topics are definitely in order.
Member Cohen, I think you're muted.
Hi, I just wanted to correct the record that the memo that I put out forth to lay out the memo was in 2019. That's all I wanted to just correct that record. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is our Executive Director, Brenda Fleming, on the line or available?
Yes, Chairman Vasquez and members, I'm available. This is great discussion. We do have some of the information on our welfare exemptions as it relates to the certificates, the OCCs and the SCCs, et cetera. So some of the information is available. What I'd like to do, because I think the more that this discussion occurs, it's one that has a number of layers of onions, if you will. So what I would suggest is, I think on a broader scope, I suggest that we could probably come back with a white paper in the July timeframe. But what I'd like to propose, if the board would approve, is having the opportunity to flesh it out a little bit more with staff and the chair's office, because again, some of this information we're going to need to work with the assessors also because of our joint partnership in the administration of the welfare exemption program. And then perhaps what we could do is take an opportunity to do some of the initial work and at least come back perhaps at the June meeting with an update on what's possible and how much we've achieved in terms of collecting the information and preparing for the white paper. If positive, then we could try to target doing the white paper by the July board meeting. But just in case, perhaps the assessors and others need a little bit more time frame, perhaps even August, if the board would consider that. But I think there are a number of different issues related to this, and I think it would be prudent for us to just flesh it out a little bit more, working with our partners, and then come back with a pretty good product for you in July, but no later than the August timeframe. Again, if the board would be open to that approach.
So it sounds like you're prepared to at least begin this process and come back and report out some progress in our June meeting. And then at that point, we can make a decision or determination if it's possible to do something in July or August. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And I'm seeing heads nod. Member Cohen, you still have your hand up. Is that an old hand? Okay. So if people are comfortable with that, do we need an official motion for that? I don't think so, do we? I think we just, that's good direction, I think, no? Okay, I'm looking
I think to the extent that the board is comfortable with us returning in June with at least to report out with an update as to what the time frame is and what's delivered, that piece would be helpful. And then really at the June meeting, we would make a more final decision as to the next steps regarding July or August timeframe. So I'm fully prepared to receive that assignment, sir.
I appreciate it. And I'm seeing nods and hands from folks. So that'll be the course. And really appreciate your time and willing to stay in and hang in there with us, Controller, because I think you really gave us some good history and some guidance on this one. Because I think it's much needed in the state of California, and whatever we can do to weigh in and help, I think we should do it. But thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for the flexibility of moving this item up on the agenda.
Not a problem. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you can call the next item.
Certainly. The next item is G1, Chief Counsel Matters, Rulemaking, Proposed Property Tax Rule 462.540. Staff requests authorization to publish Property Tax Rule 562.540, change in ownership, base year value transfers, to implement and make specific provisions of Section 2.1 of Article 13A of the California Constitution. This item will be presented by Mr. Moon.
Is Mr. Moon available?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Chair Vasquez, members of the board. This is Richard Moon with the legal department. As you know, since Prop 19 was passed by voters on November 3rd, staff has been working on providing guidance to all interested parties, and that guidance has come in the various forms, FAQs on the website, letter to assessors, and at the February 24th meeting, the board authorized staff to begin the regular rulemaking process for Prop 19. And as you know, there are two major parts to Prop 19, one dealing with intergenerational transfers and one dealing with base year value transfers. We're here today to request that the board authorize to publish the notice of proposed action to begin the official rulemaking process on the base year value transfer part of Prop 19, and that would be proposed Rule 462.540. As reported by staff in February, we have completed drafting the proposed rules. We've received comments by interested parties. Those comments were reviewed by staff. Some of those comments made their way into revisions to the rule itself. Some of those comments we will be incorporating into future guidance, and some of those comments we will be holding to see if it's appropriate to include them in any future possible amendments to the rule. So the rule before you today is consistent with the structure of existing property tax rules and reflects what staff believes to be a version of the rule that meets the direction given to staff by the board, that it address fundamental necessary guidance for implementation and administration, and that it be done expeditiously. And therefore, we're requesting that you approve the publication of the notice of proposed action for this rule. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. And just for the record, I see Ms. Stowers has now joined us. Welcome, Ms. Stowers, and give our best. I forgot to thank the controller. I noticed she had to step out for another meeting herself. But with that, do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Moon? Seeing none, I have one quick one, and my question is, would you add a sentence or I guess informative digest, not the rule itself, but on the policy statement, clarifying that Prop 19 did not repeal or replace any part of Section 69 or 69.3?
Yes, we could make that change to the notice of proposed action. As you know, the legislature in its latest iteration of SB 539 has added intent language, essentially stating that, and I think that would make us comfortable enough to put it into a statement to that effect into the informative digest section of the notice of proposed action.
I appreciate it. I think that would really help the public, especially as they log into our website on this issue. And I see Member Gaines' hands is up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Vasquez. I just wanted to make a general comment in reference to Tax Rule 462.540. But this is the base year value transfer. This is the positive aspect of Prop 19, and it really provides that flexibility for homeowners over age 55 or fire victims or those who are disabled, the opportunity to move anywhere else in the state within the same price as the house was sold at. So that just provides flexibility for folks, and so that they can move anywhere they want. Maybe it's moving closer to family or friends, and not having a big tax impact that would hurt them financially, maybe as they're preparing for retirement, or maybe they're already retired, or they're on a limited income. So I just wanted to remind our constituents that this is the best part of Prop 19. I know we're still struggling with the other aspect on, you know, we're trying to get clarification through the legislature on the some of the exemptions that were lost, and they'll wrangle through that. But this is clearly a benefit for home ownership in California. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions of Mr. Moon? Seeing none and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, do we have any public comments on this item?
Chairman Vasquez, we do not have any written comments, and I can find out from the AT&T moderator. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, we request that callers provide their name.
Of course. And ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0. And there is currently no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. Member Gaines, I'm assuming that hand is an old hand you have sitting up there.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. With that, members, I would like to move that we authorize publication of the proposed rule and authorize staff to add a clarifying sentence to the informative digest reflecting that certain current statutes will continue to be an option for taxpayers in addition to Prop 19.
I'll second that.
It's been seconded by Member Gaines. Any comments or questions from the members? Seeing none. Ms. Taylor, did you say we had a written comment on this or we don't?
We do not.
And can we check? Well, you already checked with AT&T, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have.
With that, can you please call the roll then on this?
Certainly. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous, all those present. Thank you, members. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call our next item.
The next item is J1, Administrative Consent Agenda, Approval of the Board Meeting Minutes for April 27th, 2021. Contribution disclosure forms are not required.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Members, do you have any comments, questions on the minutes or changes? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, we don't have any written comments on this, do we?
We do not.
And do we have any public on the line on this, on the minutes?
Let me check. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, we request that the callers provide their name.
Of course. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your phone. And there is currently no one in the queue at this time.
Thank you. Members, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the board hearing minutes.
Motion to approve, Member Gaines.
It's been moved by Member Gaines. Second. It's been seconded by Stowers. Seeing no other hands or comments or questions. Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll on that.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call the next item.
The next item is J2, Administrative Consent Agenda, Adoption of the Property Tax Forms.
Excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Members, do you have any questions or comments on this matter?
Comment if I could.
Yes,
Member
Member
Gaines.
Gaines, go ahead.
So, yeah, it looks like what we've done is we're just making some adjustments here because of the passage of Prop 19. And then in addition, we're just making some updates on different, whether it's an exemption or base year transfer through here. So I think this is exactly what the BOE should be doing. We're reflecting the passage of Prop 19 and then updating other property tax forms. So I'd be willing to make a motion at the appropriate time.
Appreciate that. Let me just check with Ms. Taylor if we have any written comments or public comments on this item.
Chairman Vasquez, we do not have any written comments, and I can check with the AT&T moderator.
Thank you.
AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, we request that the callers provide their name.
Of course. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, if you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please press 1, then 0. And there is currently no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. With that, and Member Gaines, you're moving this item. And
Yes, so moved for the adoption of the property tax forms.
It's been moved by Member Gaines. I will go ahead and second that. And seeing no hands or comments or questions, Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous, all those present. Ms. Taylor, if you please call the next item.
The next item is K1A, Executive Director's Report, Organizational Update. Report on the status of pending and upcoming organizational issues. This matter will be presented by Ms. Fleming.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I'm Brenda Fleming, Executive Director. Today's report will provide updates on our priorities and significant accomplishments since last month's report on last month's meeting. The executive team will report on their operational activities and projects in their respective areas of responsibility. Since our last meeting, one of our top priorities continues to be the implementation of Proposition 19. Additionally, our priorities also include our other tax administration functions, specifically state-assessed properties valuations, our county survey program, our training and certification programs, guidance, legal opinions, litigation matters, etc. And of course, the implementation of our strategic goals and objectives to rebuild and modernize our programs. Members, I'm grateful that during this pandemic, our workforce has remained healthy with very few positive COVID-19 cases and minimal staff impacted. We continue to adhere to state mandates for social distancing, mask guidance, and statewide reporting protocols. Overall, the agency continues to successfully perform our tax administration functions and duties while we continue under COVID restrictions. As you know, we continue to rebuild and modernize our agency, which includes enhancing our transparency and the value of the information on our BOE website. In addition to the continual updates on the Proposition 19 information, another very important update is to our litigation roster. The updated roster was posted on Friday, May 21st. It can be easily found under the Legal Resources Current Litigation section located on the bottom of the BOE website. Moving to the next item, members, as you are aware, over the last few months, there have been a number of board assignments to the Executive Director. To keep you informed, staff is making good progress on these projects, which will be scheduled for presentation to you at upcoming meetings. We look forward to reporting out on these projects that contribute to our strategic goals. We do want to make sure that we're completing work that's assigned to us, but again, we also would like to make sure that we're doing quality work for you. So we appreciate your support and your patience as we work through that material. Members, moving to the next item, and finally, on behalf, members, just allow me to publicly thank the California Taxpayers Association and CalTax President Rob Gutierrez for the invitation to participate in their 95th annual meeting. We appreciate the opportunity to continue the annual tradition of meaningful discussion and Q&A with the CalTax Board and its members on very important property tax administration topics. The CalTax annual meeting is an excellent forum, members, for feedback and input that we use to better serve our taxpayers, constituents, and improve our services. Members, as you know, as I report each month, there are many other organizational activities, but again, I don't want to steal staff's thunder, so they will provide the updates on the great work that they are accomplishing. And that will be coming up next. Members, if I could continue. K1B, which is the extension of time to complete the local assessment roll. Revenue and Taxation Code 616 requires county assessors to annually complete their local assessment rolls by July 1. Section 155 provides that the board or its executive director may extend by 30 days the deadline for any official act by the assessor. In the case of public calamity, the deadline may be extended by 40 days. Section 155 also requires that the executive director inform the board of any such extensions at its next regular meeting. This report is to inform you that Colusa, Los Angeles, Mariposa, and Yuba County assessors have requested and have been granted a 30-day extension for completing their 2021 local assessment roll. And again, members, lastly, I just again want to always thank the staff for the good work and their dedication to BOE success. Members, if there are no questions, the real thunder and the real quality information will be coming now from the staff who will report on their operational priorities and projects. Members, if there is no questions, I'll turn it over to Ms. Renati.
Seeing no hands or comments, go ahead, Brenda.
Thank you, Ms. Renati.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. My name is Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today, I'll report on the agency's operational priorities and projects since last month. As you are well aware, since the passage of Prop 19, a considerable amount of the agency's activities are to ensure the successful implementation of Prop 19 and to keep taxpayers and the public informed. Concurrently, we continue to concentrate on our operational priorities to make progress in achieving our strategic goal to rebuild, revitalize, and modernize our agencies. The first item I will report on today is our workforce capacity. Since my last report, we have filled 9 vacant positions. As a result, in the last 11 months, we have filled a total of 36 positions. 98% of the agency's remaining vacant positions are in the various stages of the active recruitment process. Through the collective efforts of the management team, increasing progress has been made to reduce our vacancies, and we expect to continue this momentum in the coming months. Due to our recruitment activities, over 65% of the filled positions are individuals new to the Board of Equalization. So we are investing time in onboarding activities to ensure our new staff are well-trained and have the tools they need to succeed. Members, this concludes my report. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Question, if I could.
Thank you. Member Gaines, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just, more of a comment, really. I just wanted to thank Brenda and the team and Lisa Renati for all of her effort here, because we're making a lot of progress. And so it's nice to see that we've moved through kind of the phase of promotion, and now we're filling in a lot of those empty spots. And I think it's interesting that some of those folks are coming from perhaps other state agencies, but also folks coming from the private sector, from local government. And I just think that that's a great opportunity, because if people are coming from outside the organization, that can provide a fresh perspective. And yet through the promotion phase, we're keeping our talent within the organization. So it seems like a good combination. And it's just encouraging to see that that we are making progress. We're filling those positions. And I know it's been a priority of this board over the last couple of years. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Oh, I see a hand there. Member Cohen.
Thank you. I have a question. This, Lisa Renati, before you joined the team, we were in pursuit of getting our HR delegation reinstated. I wanted to know what the status is, or the update is, on the Board of Equalization being an agency that can stand up on its own 2 feet. And Ms. Renati, my apologies if I know I directed the question towards you, but maybe Ms. Fleming is the best person to answer the question.
Thank you, Member Cohen. I'll take a stab at it, and I know Ms. Fleming is listening, so she'll jump in if I miss anything. The agency's restored delegation is definitely one of our goals in our strategic plan, so that we can get that restored delegation back and continuing to build our workforce capacity more quickly. Right now, we are in process of asking for a restored delegation back. We've done the work and have the information on hand to show that we have made great achievements in how we are managing our recruitments, and the information that was included in the past investigation that led to losing the delegation, those items are no longer something that we are shown to have any problems with. We don't have any nepotism issues. We are not finding, any types of illegal hires. We are doing everything based on the state's merit principles. So we are moving forward, trying to get that restored delegation back, and I hope to bring back information in a couple of months showing that progress to you, and with success in getting that restored delegation back. And hopefully I've answered your question.
Maybe,
yes,
you could describe to me what efforts you've taken. I mean, you just said a lot of that you'll get back to me, but I want to know where we are today. What's happening? What calls have been made? What is the state DHR saying to us? I mean,
so the next steps,
one thing I want to know
are that we have gathered the documentation on hand that we need to prove with a series of all the information of all the hires we've done in the past, showing those documentation of all the hires that we've done, getting the agreement from both CDTFA and from CalHR that all of our hiring packages have been clean and that we have no issues to report. And that documentation will be used to schedule an appointment to get on a hearing with SPB, to present that documentation along with our partners at CalHR and CDTFA, who will come forth and provide testimony that we have met the the benchmarks to request and possibly gain back our restored delegation.
And what are those benchmarks?
So members,
what are
members,
those
this is Brenda.
that we need to reach?
So thank you for your question, Ms. Cohen. This is Brenda Fleming, Executive Director. Let me offer a little bit of help here. So specifically, in order to get the delegation back, we have to first prove with evidence of consistent practices of all the transgressions that existed in the original document that caused it to be loose. As Ms. Renati indicated, some of those items include illegal hires, all the appropriate documentation that is consistently needed for new hires, which includes the hiring packages of information, making sure probes are done, making sure training's done. So there's a list of material there, and we're more than happy to give you that list again. What happens then is you really didn't have to go back and just show over a period of time that you are consistently demonstrating that the issues that you had before have been completely resolved. Subsequent to that, as the next step, the normal routine process included in this is that there is a compliance review that all state agencies go through. In our specific case, we've just recently been going through just a routine compliance audit. State Personnel Board is using that compliance review to just reassess and redetermine and sort of recheck us as to how well we're doing. We're very fortunate in that there were a number of issues that we are basically in a pretty healthy status. The issue there specifically, and we'll be sending you this information, the issue with the compliance review, that is again part of the step to demonstrate that we're complying. The bigger issues that we're finding now are that our relationship and working with the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, by statute, they are required to provide our administrative and HR functions. That language is articulated in Government Code 15600 based upon the AB 102 legislation that passed in July of 2017. As a result of that, the CDTFA has the HR professionals, which the BOE currently does not have. Again, as you know, under AB 102, all of our HR professionals are transitioned to CDTFA. Since CDTFA has the HR professionals, there's a body of work that it is exclusive to them because of the HR professional classifications. That said, for some of the items where we're not quite in compliance based upon this recent compliance audit, based upon that current status, CDTFA is the group that is responsible for that, and so that charge or that offense is then therefore a charge to CDTFA. So when we're doing this review, members, with State Personnel Board, CDTFA has been involved with us because, again, the State Personnel Board has recognized that a lot of the challenges that are currently existing, which are mostly process, basically, there's no transgressions or any illegalities or problems. Most of it's just a process issue. That work is under CDTFA. And so the report, when as we're working with them now, will come out just to basically indicate which category of HR work is in the jurisdiction of BOE and which categories of HR work in those transactions are CDTFA. So based upon those recent conversations with the State Personnel Board, with CDTFA, with CalHR, they are indicating at this point that we're looking green to get the opportunity to get our delegation back. Now, the next step following that is we will write another letter to the State Personnel Board, again requesting the opportunity to come before the State Personnel Board hearing. And our goal is to try to, as Ms. Renati alluded to, our goal is to finalize this current compliance report and then come back with a letter to the State Personnel Board to see if we can get on a hearing this year. To the extent that we have that hearing this year, we would go before the hearing, present our case as to the documentation that confirms that we are in fact in compliance with those things that are under our control. It's the State Personnel Board then that would grant the delegation or some level, either full or some level of delegation, that authority being delegated back to us. What we've been doing in these working relationships, which in state service, the realities are it does take time. We've been working very closely with CDTFA and with CalHR because having their documentation that supports our compliance and all things being green, successful, we would also request, and they fundamentally agreed to write also letters of endorsement on our behalf. So our goal at this point would be to finish up the compliance documentation, and once that's finalized, members will also get a copy of that material, of course. Once that's done, it's that documentation that would be the next gate, if you will, that we would go through to begin the process with the hearing with the State Personnel Board. So it is much more optimistic this year than it has been in prior years, but this compliance review was one of the significant steps that we needed to accomplish. I'm more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you.
You're muted, Member Cohen, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, thank you very much. Thank you for letting me know. So, so I'm personally impacted by the gaps that exist in HR. Ms. Fleming, I was wondering if it's possible that we can, or if we need to amplify CDTFA's inability to meet our needs and an immediate need to build our own HR team. The other part of my question, I don't think Lisa Renati heard it, but is the Procurement Authority. Where are we on that? And these are two questions that are processes that we started back in 2019. Right, and so we are still impacted by it. And so, although your report seems to be thorough, it's just to allude that we are moving forward, but I just don't understand why we're moving so slowly on it.
No, and I appreciate the comment, and it feels slow to us also, Ms. Cohen and members. It's a good part of the state process, unfortunately. So if I may direct my response back to your question on procurement, the procurement delegation is also, I have to go back because I think that's something that we'd have to address through legislation. So I'll be happy to drill down on that detail for you. Members come back with the scope of what the basis of that loss of delegation. Just to clarify, the delegation right now is through, for all things for board member purchases, or we're required under AB 102 to go through DGS for those services. And so we would have to go back and I'll revisit the specific details on the legislation and to confirm the exact language. And the members will be happy to come back with a proposal as to how we might be able to look at some legislative changes to give remedy to this. I think overall we're approaching that time, and I applaud this board for their attention to this matter, and we'll welcome with open arms your assistance. I think we're reaching a point where we may need to look at some legislative remedies for the restrictions that are on the board based upon the AB 102 issues. So to the extent that we are, can demonstrate that the issues and concerns have been remedied, then that might be a path forward. And members, I would be more than happy to have some conversations with you in one-on-one discussions as to how we might approach that issue. But I think we're reaching a point where we are, as you may or may not recall, as of July 1 of 2021, we will be reaching our 4-year milestone with that legislation. And as you know, just to walk a little bit down memory lane, in July 1 of 2017, BOE was pretty radically restructured. And so this time frame is going, I think, to your concern and some of the others, it really has been a pretty significant rebuilding of an organization, which fundamentally is almost as though, in some respects, in terms of state administrative practices, we were rebuilding it from bottom up. So yes, it has taken a bit of time, but it was important to make sure that as we're moving forward, we had to stop the bleeding first and concentrate on those things that we were mandated to do to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to do so. I think now we basically have, plugged the holes in the levee, and now we're prepared to finish strengthening our organization and completely rebuilding so we can move forward. So I'll be more than happy, members, to work with you to look at some legislative proposals. We definitely have had some internal conversations about where we see these restrictions. Again, I don't want to be, throw any other agency under the bus in terms of, our state partnerships, but it's an issue with the recent arrangement with the other government agency that provides our services, because they too are weren't staffed or funded to take on these additional services. So I think there are some legislative remedies that could help correct this condition.
Member
Okay.
Cohen, are you good? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Processing everything. So members, I'm bringing this up because I don't know where your offices are, but I have my personal needs are within my office, and there's public criticism that we've received from the state auditor that I believe is unfounded. That public criticism from the auditor is just about our inability to fill our vacancies and address other HR needs. So it's almost like it's a cyclical catch, right? We can't fulfill our HR needs, but and yet we get criticized for it, but we can't fulfill it because it was taken away. And one of the things that I was trying to do back in 2019 was to establish this and quickly to move forward. And so here we are in 2021, and we're I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but there's criticisms out there about this. Excuse me, the Legislative Analyst Office, not the Auditor's Office, the Legislative Analyst Office, they're criticizing us as we go through this budget process. We have to defend the fact that we haven't spent any money. We haven't spent any money because we haven't hired. We haven't hired because there's a gap in the way our hiring process works. So it's really incredibly frustrating, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but it is what it is. I'll rest here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Cohen. So this is Executive Director Fleming. You're correct in that there have been some, the standard state reports that when you're going through the budget process where, for example, the Ledge Analyst Office will weigh in terms of, looking at each agency, and Ledge Analyst's role is to provide input on, the status of those agencies and where they are. And lots of conversations with the Ledge Analyst Office, they're also acknowledging that they understand that much of the challenge that we're having is related to the relationship through statute with how we do HR practices. So there's more criticism of this, acknowledgement of this as a problem with some basically we could leverage some of that material to assist us with the legislative changes we're needing, because I think what they're acknowledging there is that, yeah, they've got a problem, their hands are tied. So and so there was lots of discussion about, the delayed processes and the inefficiencies of the current process getting these services through another agency along with the delegation issue. Because actually the loss of delegation is an issue. The real issue is going through multiple agencies to get the services done, versus being able to directly administer the work like we did in prior years. So right now to handle a legislative process, or I'm sorry, an HR process, we for the most part are working through 3 agencies. Similarly for procurement. So again, legislation might be the remedy to address those issues, to look for a more efficient and more streamlined, more cost-effective approach.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that back up to our attention, Member Cohen. I think we need to step it up, and if it's legislation, let's work on some legislation. I do see a hand up from Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez and Member Cohen. I think Ms. Fleming actually hit it on the head why I raised my hand. As far as HR, it's a 2-pronged problem. It's the loss of the HR delegation, and it's also the current statute that says we receive our HR services from another agency. And that, all due respect to CDTFA, they too lost their delegation, but they were able to gain it back. So, Ms. Fleming, are you doing a 2-pronged approach, get the delegation back, and in the near future, looking for law changes, budget change proposals to establish our own HR shop?
So yes, we are using a multiple tiered process. The first issue is to pursue the delegation, and then the predecessor step to that is this compliance review that that we're in the process of, again, routine reviews that all agencies go through. So we're going to leverage that and the conversations and partnerships that we've established there, and some specific conversations we've had with the State Personnel Board. Again, then the next step would be to go before the State Personnel Board to get the delegation back for HR. That's their jurisdiction. Then concurrent to that, what we have been having is conversations about how to remedy the issues with CDTFA. And so it will be at that point that I would work with staff and then be able to sit down with you to come back with all of you as members to come back with some recommendations for some proposed legislation. Because I think that would be the next step. So that's on our radar to pursue that. We wanted to get delegation out of the way. It's just taking longer than any of us would have anticipated. And a lot of that has to do with the relationships in working with the other state agencies. So they're so tightly coupled and so commingled. It's easy to describe it. It's a little bit more challenging when you're actually working through it on a day-by-day basis. But there are definitely some complexities related to the statutory issues, and that is going to require a legislative remedy. So that would be the second step in this process: delegation and then legislation. Then the third portion of that would be the delegation for the procurement item. So it's going to take, it's definitely a phased process, and all of those will have to work concurrently again, and we'll working as expeditiously as possible to get through this, in addition to, you know, the other workload. So the blessing of this whole thing, in my opinion, is that one of the things that the staff have been working on is filling the vacancies. And so our objective is to fill the vacancies. So by filling the vacancies, we fill critical roles in our internal administrative areas. So hiring those support services staff gives us the additional capacity that we need to do the paperwork and the documentation and all that material to address these issues. We've now got the increased capacity to take on that work. So to Ms. Cohen's point, some of this delay has been, you know, when you've got just one or two people doing the work, that was contribute to the slowness of the effort. We've now addressed that issue. Increased capacity will allow us to expedite these remedies.
Thank you, staff and members. And this obviously is an issue that we'll have to continue to keep our focus on, and hopefully regain all our authority back, especially as it relates to the HR department. With that,
members, I thank you, and again, you have my commitment to move through this item to get us back to being fully restored. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, I think we can just continue on, and then we'll do the public comment at the end.
Certainly. Our next item is K1C2, Executive Director's Report, Proposition 19 Operational Priorities, Report on the Proposition 19 Implementation Project. This item has 6 sub-items as indicated on the agenda. This matter will be introduced by Chairman Vasquez and presented by Ms. Renati.
Yes, thank you. Members, Ms. Renati will first provide an update on the first sub-item, the Prop 19 Implementation Action Plan. And when she's finished, I will ask her to introduce the next speaker and sub-item on the agenda. As previously stated, we will hold all public comment on this until the completion of the entire report. Ms. Renati, if you would please proceed with your presentation of the Prop 19 Action Plan.
Thank you, Chairman Vasquez. Members, the next item is an overview of the BOE's Implementation and Action Plan for Proposition 19. Our Prop 19 implementation project is organized to optimize success, minimize risk, and allows for flexibility to organize workloads and resources. Our implementation project for Prop 19 is currently expected to take approximately 3 to 5 years. At this point in our project, we will be reporting on the major phases and work plan through 2022. A high-level implementation plan is attached to today's agenda. This plan highlights 7 of the project work categories. Within each of the 7 work categories are identified activities. In a moment, each team leader will provide you with a report on the activities completed to date and additional information regarding the implementation plan actions for their areas. Before we move to these informative reports, I'm happy to report that the status of our Prop 19 implementation project is green, which indicates we have no issues or concerns to report. The team has spent a great deal of time working on these important efforts, and I would be remiss if I did not commend each of them for the continued actions to ensure we stay on plan. Members, unless you have any questions for me, I would like to give the floor to the team so they can provide you with specific information on Prop 19 implementation action. The first report will be provided by Mr. David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department, and Ms. Patty Lumsden, Chief of County Assessed Properties Division, who will provide a report on the department's implementation actions, including updates on guidance. Mr. Young, if you're available.
Yes, good afternoon all. Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. I will provide an update as to the property taxes Efforts so far in implementing Proposition 19, they concentrate mainly on 4 areas at this point. Our first major area of work is we still have a fair amount of inquiries coming in. Staff has been responding to inquiries that we receive either by phone, email, or written letters. The volume has decreased since January and February, but there is still some workload attached to it, and staff is spending a good amount of time answering those inquiries. We're getting to them in a quick fashion, and we're turning those answers around as quickly as we can. The next area that we are concentrating on is guidance through LTA. As you all know, we've completed 2 LTAs already and are already been published. The first one dealt with the intergenerational transfer provision of Prop 19, and the second one dealt with the base year transfers as it relates to those that are seniors 55 or older and those disabled persons. The LTA, those are already released and available on our website. The next LTA staff is working on right now will deal with the second aspect of the base year transfer, and that is for disaster relief. So right now, the guidance has been drafted and is going through internal review. We expect to have that out in the very near future. Our third area where we're concentrating much of our effort has to do with the tracking system. As you all know, Proposition 19 requires the board to track the base year transfers. There is a limit. There's a 3-time limit in which you can transfer your base year value. We already currently do a tracking for the old Proposition 609110. That is a 1-time limit. You get to do it one more time if you become disabled after you have after you do it for age. The new system, the new Prop 19 expands that opportunity to 3 times. And so we are working with our partners in CDTFA and their technology department in expanding and updating our system in order to be able to track that. That will remain a board function. Once the development of the system is done, BOE and staff will maintain the tracking system for Prop 19 base year transfers. And the last area that we've been concentrating our efforts on is monitoring legislation. So right now we are following legislation as it works its way through. We've been working with the legislature on behind the scenes on review and providing our technical expertise and advice on proposed legislations. So that is the highlight of our main focus and what we are concentrating on so far in the property tax department. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Mr. Young, were you gonna allow Ms. Lumsden to go on, or are you pretty much covering it?
I think I covered it, but Ms. Lumsden, you are more than welcome to add anything that I may have missed on our implementation process.
No, Dave, I believe you've covered everything, but I definitely am here in case you need assistance in answering any questions that might come up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young and Ms. Lumsden. Members, the next report will be provided by Chief Counsel Henry Nanjo and Tax Counsel Richard Moon, who will provide a report on the legal department's implementation actions.
Can we hold that for just a second?
Yes.
Yeah, Ms. Taylor, real quick. I just had one quick question, and it's related to the LTA on base year value transfers. Number, I guess it's 2021-019. We state that it must be read in conjunction with LTA number 2020-061, which also describes Proposition 19 base year value transfers. We also state that to the extent that LTA's number 2020/061 is inconsistent with LTA number 2021-019. The more recent LTA supersedes the older one. When my staff and I looked at both the LTAs, it was very difficult to determine what details were inconsistent between the two LTAs. Is there a way for you to clarify this and make it easy for the taxpayer to determine what is the superseded?
Of course, I'd be more than happy to address that, Chair Vasquez. I've taken a look at our first LTA, the one in 2020/061, and it provides general guidance to all of Prop 19. Our latter LTA, the one that you mentioned on in this year, was specific to base year transfers. There are a couple of items that we found that were inconsistent, and we've already basically notated them on the first one, on the 2020. There are two items already on there. One has to do with whether the sale, when you sell a property and purchase its replacement, whether it has both of those transactions have to happen before the April 1 date. We've already made the notation that that's been superseded by a legal memo. It's on the 2020/061 LTA, and we made one more notation on an issue of what will qualify as a family home, and we advised in the 2020 LTA that a family home includes a family farm that contains a principal residence. And in the legal memo, we've also said that we've actually said no, a family farm does not need to contain a principal residence, and that notation's already been made on that LTA. I will have staff finalize one more look through to make sure there is no other conflicting or inconsistent information between the two LTAs, and if we find anything else, I will have the first LTA annotated, put some additional annotation on there to note that that portion has been superseded by more recent guidance.
I appreciate that. With that, members, do we have any other questions or comments for Mr. Young? Seeing and hearing none. Before we move on, Ms. Taylor, let me just take a quick check with the members here, because I did get a little note from one of the members about possibly a lunch break. How do the members feel? Should we try to slip in a break now or later, or how do people feel? Is there a preference?
I like one now.
Is that Member Cohen?
That's Member Cohen.
Yes.
And I'm asking on behalf of Madison. She'd like to eat lunch.
I'm hearing it. That sounds good.
Yeah, that would be great. Are we taking a break now?
You guys want to do it now? Is this appropriate? Should we do it now?
Sure.
I'm seeing
Yes,
a thumbs up.
great.
Okay. So what are we looking at? Is 30 minutes sufficient?
That's fine.
Is that good? Member Cohen, is 30 minutes enough?
Perfect.
Okay. Why don't we take a break? It's 12:33. So we'll say just maybe 2 or 3 minutes after 1, we'll regroup.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
All righty. Thanks. We'll see you all back in 30 minutes.